Today we're going to talk about the order of operations. We want to know what it means, how we perform the order of operations, and why we should care. First, let's talk about the phrase order of operations. What does it mean? Well, one way that we can think about it is in terms of similar phrasing. For example, order of operations means the step-by-step process of doing something. The step-by-step part links up with order, and the doing something links up with operation. But we need still more specificity. We need to think a bit more precisely than doing something when we're talking about what happens when we perform an operation. Think about, instead, how a plus sign operates on a set of numbers, how a plus sign has a function. So when we're talking about the order of operations, we're talking about the step-by-step process of performing some function according to the meaning of, in the case of mathematics, a given symbol. So what is the standard order of operations in math? Well, we typically use in the United States PEMDAS, which we understand by the phrase, "Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally." What it means is that you work through a math equation in the following order. Suppose you have the following math equation to solve. 2 squared times 3 divided by 1 plus 1 plus 7 minus 4. You're going to calculate what is inside the parentheses. Notice 1 plus 1 gives you 2. Every time I calculate, I'm going to put the result in red. Then you calculate the exponents, or the root, depending on what you're given. In this case, 2 squared equals 4. Next, in order of operations from left to right, you will multiply and divide, or if the division symbol comes first, you'll perform that operation first. Again, you're working from left to right. So 4 times 3, since that comes first from left to right, of the two operations, multiplication and division, means that you've got 12. Then 12 divided by 2 gives you 6. Lastly, you add and subtract again from left to right. So if subtraction comes first, you will subtract first and then add. 6 plus 7 gives us 13. 13 minus 4 is 9. So the result of solving the equation 2 squared times 3 divided by 1 plus 1 plus 7 minus 4 is 9. Okay, let's try one together. Remember, every time a calculation is made, the result of that calculation is going to appear in red. So take a look at the equation that we have, and let's proceed. What are you going to do first? Work the parentheses. What are you going to do second? Work the exponent. What will you do next? Multiply or divide, depending on which comes first when we're working left to right. So now we've multiplied first, which means that next we divide. And then finally, again, working from left to right, you add and subtract. Add, subtract. I mentioned earlier that the order of operations is important, but within the basic structure, there's some flexibility. So remember, I was talking about working from left to right. When you know that you're going to multiply and divide before you add and subtract, but after you work through exponents, which come after working through parentheses, what you want to understand is that the left to right part is what is really important here. In other words, you complete what's in the parenthetical, you complete the exponent, then depending on which symbol or operator comes first, multiplication or division, you will work that symbol left to right before the other one. So even though it's standard in the US to read PEMDAS, you could easily work left to right PEDMAS. The same also goes for addition and subtraction. A couple of other things are worth mentioning. One is that it's not the case that you have to have parentheses. You could have brackets or braces. The point is, whatever is in some sort of parenthetical is what's done first. Similarly, if you have not an exponent, but you have instead a square root, then you're going to work that before you work the division or the multiplication. Lastly, if you don't have an operation to perform, for example, if you don't have anything to add, move on to the next operator. It might be worthwhile thinking about why we should care about this sort of thing. First off, as a nurse, you work with numbers a lot. You need to know the basics of math. But another, arguably equally important point is that as a nurse, you need to be a flexible thinker in order to care best for your patients. That means that you need to be able to see, for example, equivalences. So remember earlier I said that when you're ready to multiply or divide, you work left to right, beginning with whichever operator comes first. Similarly, suppose you say something like this: the patient is neither on diuretics nor are the legs edematous. In terms of a synonymous way of asserting the sentence, you could replace diuretics and edematous with synonymous terms that are more familiar. In addition, you can assert a logically equivalent sentence. Let's take a look. We have neither nor, and that becomes not this and not that. In addition, you've reformulated diuretics with water pills, and you've reformulated edematous with legs are full of or retaining fluid. So what you're doing is, in the case of, let's say, talking to a family member or talking to the patient themselves, you can speak in a language that they understand, but it's also the case that you're flexible enough to assert a sentence in a logically equivalent way. I hope this tutorial has helped you think about what it means to perform the order of operations in basic math.